And the new WBO interim champion, Brian Norman Jr. catches a body in the welterweight division. Performance of the night, him alongside Usyk, probably my best performances that I enjoyed from today's evening of boxing. Top Rank has a card in San Diego. Brian Norman just caught a body. Throughout this video, you will see images from that. Shout out to Giovanni Santillan. He's trained by Robert Garcia, and it definitely wasn't his night. Brian Norman's side, his explosiveness, his power, him being a southpaw, I think all these things culminated to Brian Norman just obliterating him and beating the brakes off of him. Very, very impressive stuff. I think Brian Norman cooked and looked sensational. The closing was in the 10th round, I believe it is. He badly had Giovanni Santillan hurt. You could have argued that the stoppage could have came right there. Ref allowed it to continue, and it just got worse for Santillan. What I like from Brian Norman is he landed, I want to say a right uppie, kept throwing some punches, some kind of decoy punches, bop, bop, touch, 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 touch. And then he landed the left uppercut, and he just completely befuddled Giovanni Santillan, and it looked like he literally disconnected. It looked like a computer and you just unplug it from the wall. It just lost power. And the way he fell, his body was like contorted and like almost like a malfunction type of way. And this was just sensational stuff. This fight was for the WBO Championship of the World. Top Rank on their page, they have the highlights for this particular fight. Formerly known as Twitter, aka X, you can find those highlights there, and you can see some of the screen grabs that I have in this video, but definitely sensational stuff. And I wanted to take the time out to make this video because obviously it's been a busy day. Tyson Fury was beaten for the first time as a pro. He lost to Alexander Usyk. I got loads of content coming, but with the Fury and Usyk fight, that fight particularly, not so much the card, but that fight being for Undisputed, I think this ESPN card kind of went under the radar, and that's why I'm making this video for. Shout out to my boy Brian Norman Jr. You know, killer performance. The other thing that I like, why I like this for Brian Norman, is his last performance, he received a lot of criticism, including myself, because I keep it real and tell you what I see. He was dropped in his last fight. It ended in a weird, non-traditional way. I believe it was like a cuts. And he got a lot of flack from fans about that performance for getting dropped, and then it ended kind of in a funky way. And all in all, it just wasn't his best night and best showing. The great thing about the sport of boxing, especially if you're young and you learn from these, it looks like he went back to the drawing board and he came back and he showed up and he showed out, and he showed up big tonight. Because Giovanni Santillan, he is a good fighter. He's tough. He stopped Alexis Rocha, and I've watched him multiple times, and no one had done what Brian Norman had done. You got to look at it. Brian Norman Jr. just stopped him, and Alexis Rocha was one of Golden Boy Promotions' top prospect. So in the same boat as like a Brian Norman, and their top prospect got beat up by the Top Rank fighter and stopped. So Giovanni Santillan can absolutely fight. And the other thing is, he's a Robert Garcia. We know Robert Garcia, the famed former fighter and trainer, and it just wasn't his night. Brian Norman had his way with them. Styles make fights, whatever you want to call it, but I really like what I seen. And I just love this because it just reaffirms what I said earlier regarding boxing, where you could have a bad night, people criticize you, you just get back to it. Go to sleep early, go back to the gym, perfect things, work on what you made mistakes on, and just overall improve. And it looks like that's what happened, because Brian Norman, there was a lot of urban legends about Brian Norman, the fighter. There one particularly that people talked about is he sparred with Terence Crawford, and there was a lot of hoopla in boxing circles that he stopped Terence Crawford or he hurt Terence Crawford. But you look at some of his more recent performance before the Santillan fight and the way, you know, things clicked, the way he performed, people hadn't gotten to see the best of it. So it didn't really fuel those rumors, because meanwhile, Crawford just beat Errol Spence Jr. And, you know, people, when they were seeing some of Brian Norman's recent performances, they're like, nah, I doubt he handled Crawford. But then the way he performed today, and I'm not trying to drudge up old beef with the Crawford situation, but what I'm saying is now I can understand based on what I've seen, you know, because I wasn't there for Crawford Norman sparring, so I don't know what went on for their sparring. However, this was a public fight made available to the public, and Brian Norman caught a body. So him being young, him being, you know, vivacious and looking for the kill, I can see it now. You know, if other people couldn't see it at any point previously with some of the other performances, you definitely see the potential, we'll say, for Brian Norman. And, you know, I think he was with BBL Prime for a minute. You know, he just had his own thing. Then he got with Top Rank, and this was his best performance. Definitely his best performance that I can remember. And it was also for the WBO title, the interim title. The thing that I love about that is, since we're talking about Crawford is fighting at 154. Now, I don't think it's actually been put out there as official, but Crawford, he's pretty much done with welterweight. Again, don't take my word for it, but from what I'm seeing, I think Crawford is done with welterweight 147. He's moving up to 54 to fight Madrimov. Should be a solid fight. And what does that mean? The reason I brought Crawford up again is because that leaves a void. So I don't know how much time, because the WBO seems to have a good relationship with Crawford. He was there for the Jake Paul card with Amanda Serrano in Puerto Rico. He visited the WBO offices and stuff like that. But once Crawford confirms that move or whatever happens, that he's staying up at 54, I don't know if they're going to let him try to keep titles at 47 and then fight Madrimov, see how he feels, and then decide what's next. I don't know when he's due up a mandatory, anything like that. But the point I'm making is basically, if it is in fact what I believe, which is Crawford campaigning at 54 next and trying to win titles at 54, then likely Brian Norman will just get elevated to the full champion with the WBO, because he's already the interim champion with the vicious. And if you're gonna win an interim title or any type of title, that's how you do it, exactly how he did it, in sensational fashion. The best fight that I've seen on this Top Rank card, and by a lot. This was a memorable knockout, top knockout of 2024. It's got to be in the nominees at the very least. So I really like what I've seen from Brian Norman. Make sure you check him out and just follow. We'll see. There's other great fights from that performance. If he builds on it, I would love to see him versus Jaron Ennis, Cody Crowley winner in a unification, or a fight with Brian Norman and Amantas Stanionis, right? There's some good fights that could still be had with this new generation of 147 pounder. You know, I don't know exactly what Devin Haney's plan, but if Devin Haney can't make 140 anymore, or if he's planning on moving to 147, he's already worked with Top Rank. So that could even be something. Brian Norman, who is very young, Devin Haney's very young. And if Devin Haney does move to 4-7 at some point and Brian Norman's still there, then that's another option. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself. Congrats to Brian Norman and his team. Sensational stuff.